Hello and welcome to another episode of Battle Ready, a special episode because today I am without Drake, he's camping, but more importantly, today we're going to talk about how to actually play Age of Sigmar 4th edition. So the purpose of this video is if you're trying to get it and the core rules might seem a little dense, maybe explaining it orally will be helpful, or you want to show a friend how to play and you can show them this video that it'll take them through all the basics. Now, this is a basic how to play video. It's not going to hit every corner case, but it's going to teach the overview of what you actually need to do to play. And it's not going to go too deep into strategy, just the bare basics. So with that in mind, let's get started at the beginning. List building. Okay, so like many games out there, Magic the Gathering and other things, you actually have to create your playing tools, your play pieces, before you get to the game, right? You can't just rock up and say, all right, deal me in with a deck of cards or something like that. You have to build your list. So what you do is you choose a faction. I'm going to choose Daughters of Cain or Stormcast or Skaven or whatever it is. And then you take units from that army. Now, every unit has a points value, which is supposed to represent basically how powerful or how useful they are on the battlefield. Something with a lot of health and that does a lot of damage is going to be higher. Something with more weak is going to be lower. In general, you can play at any points value, allegedly. I think 1,000 is okay, 1,500 is okay. Sort of the standard is 2,000 points. And you just keep adding stuff down until you get to 2,000. Now, the quirk with 4th edition is you have to take a hero, and then each hero can bring up to 3 units with him, or 4 if it's the general. You can bring up 3 units. So you take a hero and then 3 units. Take another hero and then 3 units, and so on and so forth till you've got to 2,000. That's it. Now, every hero in the book, it'll say, oh, this hero can only bring cavalry, or this hero can only bring infantry, or if it's, like the leader of your faction, this hero can bring anybody. So you have to take a look at that. But with those 2 things in mind, heroes that bring people, as long as they're the kind of people that can be brought, and you add up to 2,000, you're good. That's all you need. So now that you've got your list created, it's time to start playing. Deployment. So at the beginning, before we start playing and rolling dice or anything, we have to set up our armies. So the battlefield will be laid out, there'll be terrain and objectives and all kinds of things. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But you're going to put your army actually on the battlefield. So what will happen is you will roll off. Anytime the game asks you to roll off, both players roll a die. Whoever rolls highest wins. If it's a tie, you just re-roll. And then whoever wins the roll-off can place one of their regiments. A regiment is the hero plus whatever units he's bringing. You plop that regiment. You don't have to be deployed next to each other. They can be all over the battlefield, anywhere in your territory, typically 9 inches away from opposing territory. That way you're not right on top of each other at the very beginning. And you put them down. Now, each group of guys, let's say you've got a bunch of liberators. They come in packs of 5, although you can bring them in 10s. But as a pack of 5, they have to be together. They have to be what's called coherent, meaning they each have to be within an inch of each other. And that's true for any units up to 6. You go beyond 6, 7 or more, they have to be within an inch of 2 other guys. So you don't have long lines of guys. So you drop them, blip, 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 then you're done. Then the other guy drops his next regiment, and you go back and forth and back and forth. Now, whoever finishes dropping first, finishes putting their army down first, they get to choose who takes the first turn, right? That way, if they finish dropping first, they get to choose who takes the first turn. But when you're still putting your army down, you can see everywhere they've been. And so you're like, oh, okay, now that I know where you are, I can put this unit here, or I can put this unit over here to maximize their effectiveness. So it's a little give and take. Taking first turn can sometimes be way more important than that, but that's sort of the trade-off. The game has begun. So in general, each person takes a turn, and there are 2 turns in a battle round. Game is played over 5 battle rounds. So I take a turn, you take a turn, next battle round, next battle round. So when it's your turn, here's what you do. You play through the game in several phases. Now, at the beginning of each battle round, right, even before the first turn's hero phase, each player will get generally four command points. Now, these command points are a resource. You get 4 each turn, and they're sort of use them or lose them. right? They don't carry over. So they let you do some kind of special thing. And now there's a bunch of special things they can do. There's, I don't know, 8, 10 special things you can do, and you only have 4, so you can't do every special thing every turn. So you have to sort of decide where they're going to have the most impact. First phase is the hero phase. Generally, this is where your heroes can do the things that make them special. They'll give bonuses to different units. They'll cry out and rally for people. They'll do anything in the hero phase that's important. Now, each unit has a war scroll that says all the different things it can do, and any hero phase abilities will be coded in yellow. So that way you can see, oh yeah, I'll just look for the yellow abilities and you'll see what you can do during the hero phase. The most important is magic. Magic says you've got a spell, it'll have some effect, but you have to roll 2 dice, and on a, depending on the power of the spell, on a 6 up, on an 8 up, whatever it is, you roll. If you roll below that number, nothing happens, you move on. If you hit that number or above, then the effect will take place unless the opponent has a wizard that can try to counteract your magic. It's called unbinding, but it's like counter magic. So to unbind, they have to roll higher than whatever you rolled. So maybe your spell, you only needed a 5, but you rolled a 10. That's strong magic. So now to unbind it, they need to roll an 11 or 12. If they unbind it, again, nothing happens, you just move on. If they don't, then the effect of the spell happens. So some spells will say, do some damage. Some spells will say that this unit can get a special buff. They can get extra defense, or they can run and charge, or different things. But the effect happens. Priests operate on a slightly different system, but your priest will say a prayer. They only roll 1 dice, and nobody can unbind it. They can't be killed. If they roll a 2 through 6, they get that many points, ritual points, which you can save from turn to turn, or you can spend to cast a spell. When you cast a spell, though, you lose all your points. If you roll a 1, rather than gaining points, you lose D3 points. So rolling a 1 is bad. But rolling anything else, you at least accumulate. So sometimes it can take a couple of turns to get your priest to do something you want, but at least he's accumulating each time. Whereas a wizard, it's sort of all or nothing. They don't save anything. If you get unbound, that's it, you're done, move on. Most prayers too, they're not unbindable, so when they happen, they happen. And they'll have a low value saying, if you have 3 ritual points, they do this thing. But if you have 7, they do this better thing. So it sort of encourages you to accumulate points over time. Now in the hero phase, there are some things you can do. The first, either player in the hero phase can pay 1 and rally a unit. If your unit has taken damage, or even if guys have died, what you're going to do is you're going to roll 6 dice, and every 4 up gives you a point. And then for every point, you can heal your unit 1, or if you have enough points to match their health, like they have 2 health each and you have 2 points, you can resurrect a guy and get a guy back. So rallying allows you to get good guys back. You can't do it when they're in combat, they're a little busy, but otherwise if they are out of combat during either player's hero phase, either player can do this, you can rally. Now the off-turn player also can do one called magical intervention. And what that means is they can pay a point and they can cast a spell or do a prayer off turn. It's not their turn, but their guy can still cast or chant or whatever. When that happens, it's the exact same as they would otherwise, except because they're doing it off turn, they're rushing a little bit, I guess, it's -1. So normally I need a 7, but if I roll a 7, it's -1. So really I rolled a 6, so the spell didn't happen. So that takes effect. Once that player is done with all their hero phase stuff, right? The other player's not doing anything else unless they've spent a command point. Then it's time to move to the next phase. And the next phase is movement phase. So the movement phase, some people say, and I tend to agree, that it's the most important phase, but it's also one of the more straightforward phases. All you're going to do is you're going to pick each unit one by one that you control and move them. Now on their war scroll card, they'll have a movement value, tells you how far they can move in inches. And one of the great things about Warhammer is there's no grid, there's no squares. You just get out your tape measure and move the guys that many inches. Each guy can only move that many inches or less. So if the unit moves together, they'll all move, and they have to stay in coherency. So you can't move one guy this way and one guy that way, and now they're out of coherency. In fact, if you ever end up out of coherency, the game says you have to kill models until you're in coherency again. But that's all you do. You just move them along. Now, one thing you can do if you want to move is you can say these guys are going to run. Rather than just moving up slowly and taking positions, they're going to run to their next objective. You roll d6, whatever it is, you add that much to their move. So they could go up to 6 inches more. The downside is a unit that ran cannot charge and cannot shoot. We'll get to those, but that's a penalty. But if this is maybe early game, they weren't planning on running or charging anyway, shooting or charging anyway, go ahead and run them. You can do each unit that you control once, and that's it. 2 things about movement. So first, a pretty common keyword that a lot of units have is fly. Fly just means they can move over objectives, they can move over other units. They still can't land in combat, but they can move over people. And then the second thing is retreating. So if you are outside of combat, you can move wherever you want, you can run, you can do whatever. If you are in combat, you're not allowed to run, not allowed to redeploy. Talk about that. And if you move out of combat, you take D3 mortal damage. So they're basically hitting you as you flee out of combat. Now, if you don't want to retreat out of combat, you can't move, right? They're stuck in. If you want to retreat, you're going to take the damage. Now, again, command points. In this phase, you can do 2 things with command points. The active player can choose a unit, and instead of rolling D6, they can just pay the command point and it's an auto 6. They can just go 6 inches more. Have to do it before you roll, though. You can't roll a 1 and say, let's turn that into a 6. No, before you roll, they just go. After you've done everything, the other player then gets a chance to use their commands and their abilities, and their command that they have is redeploy. Pay the command point, they roll, and any unit can move up to that many inches. So maybe I'm within charging range and I've got a 6-inch charge. You think, I'm just going to back up. So boop, you redeploy. Maybe you roll a 4. Suddenly I have a 10-inch charge. Now it's way less likely that I'm going to get into you. You can redeploy onto objectives. You can redeploy anywhere you want. Again, the one exception is can't be in combat to use redeploy. And I should mention, when you're moving, you can't move into combat. And combat is 3 inches. So you have to stay 3 inches out of everybody. Okay, you're done moving. The other part's done moving. It's time for the next phase. And the next phase is shooting. All right. So this is a quick one for most armies. For most armies, you don't have that much shooting, although you can build, actually, I shouldn't say that, because if you wanted to build a shooting army, many armies, not all, but many can do that and just be very shooting heavy. But what you're going to do is each of your shooters, anybody who has ranged attacks, whether it's archers or crossbowmen or dragon breaths or whatever, you're going to pick them in turn and they're going to shoot. The way that you do it is you pick somebody within range. So every shooting attack has a range. 12 inches, 15 inches, whatever it is. You have to pick an enemy unit within that range. And the shooting unit cannot be in combat. Some weapons will say shoot in combat, meaning they can still shoot even if they're in combat, but most shooting weapons cannot be used in combat. So that's one thing you can do if somebody's got good shooting that you need to shut down, get into combat with it, and then it won't be able to shoot you. All right, so but let's say you're not in combat and you want to shoot somebody. You pick somebody within range, and then you're going to roll for your attacks. Now, if you look on your war scroll, it'll have the weapon and it'll say the number of attacks, and that's per model. So if it says 2 and you've got 3 guys, you're gonna have 6 attacks. So you take your 6 attacks, that means 6 dice, you're gonna roll 6 dice, and then it'll say 2 hit, 4 plus. And what that means is you're gonna roll all 6 dice, and every 4, 5 or 6, a 4 or up, 4 plus, you are gonna keep those. Those are hits. Any 1s, 2s, and 3s, those are misses, they're out. You don't roll them, you don't care about them anymore, they didn't hit the target. But just because they hit doesn't mean anything. Next to hit, it'll say 2 wound, and it'll say 3 plus. Well, now you're gonna have to take those hits and see how many of them actually injured the target, right? What was glancing blows and what were, center mass. You roll those. Again, if it's a 3 up, any 3, 4, 5, 6, you keep. Any 1s and 2s, get rid of those. All right, so now you have your wounds. These are things that actually cause damage, maybe. Because the defending unit, the defending player, will have a save. Every unit has a characteristic that says save. Generally lower is better. So let's say you have a 4-up save. That means you're going to take each one of those and you're going to see if those things that hit center mass, that hit you in the head, that hit you in the leg, something that would have caused damage, Did it bounce off your armor? Or was it turned aside by your magicalness or whatever? And you roll. If you've got a 4-up save, on a 4-up. Now some weapons will have rend, and rend reduces. So let's say I have rend 1 on my shots. That means his 4-up becomes a 5-up, right? It moves up by 1. So let's say I have rend 1, he rolls, any 5s or 6s, saved. He doesn't take damage from those. Those are thrown out just the same as if I had missed, right? And I had rolled a 1 or 2. But any 1, 2, 3, 4s, those got through. Now for each one of those dice, it does damage. Many weapons will say 1 damage, so each one is a damage. Some, for better people, will do 2, and for some really strong guys, will do 3 or even more. So let's say 3 get through after all of that. They weren't saved, and now they were 2 damage each. So that's going to be 2, 4, 6 damage. 6 damage gets applied to his unit. Maybe. Some units have what's called a ward. If they don't have a ward, then we're going to apply the damage. But if they have a ward, then it'll say on their scroll something like ward 5+. What that means is for every point of damage, so not the dice, just the damage that gets done, you're going to roll a die. So in this case, there was 6 damage done. You're going to take 6 dice and they're going to roll. If their ward's 5-up, every 5-up, they ignore that damage. So it's like an extra additional save. Once that's done, all that's complete, and there's still damage to be taken, what you're going to do is you're going to assign that damage to the unit. You're going to say, all right, this unit took 3 damage. If that's enough to kill a model, let's say every model has 2 health, then hey, the first 2 kills a guy, take the guy out. The last one stays on the unit, doesn't kill anybody yet, then it's not assigned to any particular model, it's like the unit is damaged, and you mark that unit has 1 damage. Some people like to count down and say, I've got, each of my guys have 3, so if I take 1 damage, I'm going to mark them as 2, right? They have 2 life left. And that's the way we play. I think that's better because it tells the opponent more about what's going on. But some people like to count up, and that's fine too, just so long as everybody knows what the numbers mean. And then every time it reaches that wounds characteristic, whatever it says on their war scroll, every time it reaches that wounds characteristic, you remove a model and you zero it back down. Remove a model, and then you keep going. Okay, so that was shooting. Active player can spend a command point to all-out attack when they shoot. They can only do it to 1 person per phase, so in the shooting phase, only 1 shooter can get this. But if you spend that command point, you get +1 to your hits. So if you normally hit on 4s, you're going to add 1 to all your dice, so now 3s are going to hit, right? Because 3 plus 1 is 4. So now that's really good, right? It's going to let you hit more. And the defending player can do all-out defense for a command point, which increases their save by 1. So they had a 4-up save. I had 1 rend that took them to a 5-up. They can all-out defense. They're back to their 4-up. Easy. The last one that the opponent can do is that even though it's not your phase, right? The shooting phase, only the active player goes. His stuff all shoots. The other side just sort of receives the incoming fire. Unless you spin a command point, then one of your guys for the off-turn player can shoot. The only problems are, 1, it has to be -1 to hit. So you're the opposite of all-out attack, right? If you normally hit on 4s, now you're hitting on 5s. And it has to target the closest unit. So those 2 things are true, but you can shoot off turn. Sometimes you've got great shooting. It's totally worth it. And sometimes you save that command point for something else. Last thing to know in shooting is it's sort of popular to look at the sort of the small heroes that aren't very well protected, but that give really good benefits to everybody else, makes all the units better. Because if you can kill them, all the units are worse, right? And they're not that hard to kill. However, if a hero, an infantry hero, is next to a unit, then it is a guarded hero. 2 things happen for guarded heroes. 1, to shoot them, you have to be within 12 inches. So even if I have line of sight, I have all that, I can see them, I want to shoot them. If I'm not within 12 inches, the game treats them as basically hidden. I can't shoot them. Now, let's assume I am within 12 inches. I'm 11 inches out. I can shoot them. I still get -1 to hit them. The other people are in the way, they're guarding him in some way, they're telling him to look out, you're going to be -1 to hit. So that does protect those little heroes a little bit. All right, so that is shooting. You've done all your shootings, it's time to move on to the next phase. The next phase is the charge phase. Okay, in the charge phase, you are going to pick each unit that you want that wants to get into combat. If they're already in combat, we're not going to worry about them. It's not a charge phase time. If they are in combat, if they are not in combat but want to get into combat, that's where charge phase comes. So you're going to roll two dice, and you pick unit, you roll 2 dice, and let's say you get an 8. If they can charge, that means they can move up to 8 inches as long as it gets them within half an inch of an enemy, right? So let's say the nearest enemy is 8 inches away. Great, I can move my whole unit 8 inches. They're right up in each other's face. They're going to fight. If they were 9 inches away and I rolled an 8, my unit doesn't move at all, right? There's no partial charges. I charge, and they either move or they don't move. I get to do it with each of my guys that I want to. Everybody can charge once, and that's it. Unless they're in combat, they can charge. Now, command phase, command points. Again, you've got these command points. What you can do. Number 1, I needed a 9, I rolled an 8. I can spend a command point to re-roll that charge. And maybe I get it, right? If I roll a 6 again, I didn't get it. Waste a command point. But it gives me that opportunity to roll. If I'm on the off turn, I can, for 2 command points, this is the only thing that costs 2 command points. For 2 command points, I can charge an off turn. So even though it's not my turn, I can pick one of my units to charge one of your units. There's no penalty other than it costs 2 command points, but then I can get into combat. So you were going around my big guy hoping to not bring him into combat so you wouldn't have to fight him. I'll charge him in on my own. It costs me 2 command points, but oftentimes it can be very worth it. Okay, so all the charges are done, right? Now, it's the combat phase. So this phase works a little bit different than other phases. In all the other phases, the active player goes and does all his stuff, and then the defending player can, or the inactive player, I guess, can do any special abilities they have in that phase. They've got a special move, they've got a special charge ability, whatever it is. They do that. Then the shooting. I do all my stuff, then only if they have abilities. Then the charging. I do all my stuff, then only if they have special abilities. Combat works differently. So in combat, what's going to happen is first we do all our abilities. So I do any special things that give my guys combat bonuses. Then you do any special things that give your guys combat bonuses. Then we pick alternately units to fight. So I pick a unit, then you pick a unit. Then I pick a unit, then you pick a unit. We go back and forth to sort of represent the scrum of battle. It's not my guys just beating on you while you raise your shields. We're going back and forth. So the first thing that happens is if anything has what's called strikes first, we do all those first. Anything that has strikes first goes first. Then once all that's done, we pick back and forth. Then if there's anything that has strikes last, those guys go, right? Strikes first and strikes last, depending on the army, that can show up a lot or not at all. So that may or may not come up in your game. But after you do those 2, or the first, then everything, then last. It's that simple. Now, what happens when you pick a unit to fight? Well, I take my unit, and the first thing I get to do is pile in. That means I can pick a unit I'm in combat with, and I can move up to 3 inches as long as it ends up being closer to them than farther. There's no piling away, it's a pile in, it's not a pile out. But I pile into that unit, and the purpose is either maybe I can strategically move to the side and block something or get on an objective, or more often, I'm just crowding into you so that more models are in range. And combat range is 3 inches, so any model within 3 inches can fight. Now, once I've done that, let's say I've got 5 guys, my liberators, and I look at the war scroll and it says they have 2 attacks each. So 5 times 2, I've got 10 total attacks. I'm gonna take 10 dice, and the process is the same. I'm gonna roll for hits, take my successes, roll for wounds, and then my opponent will take the successes, roll for their save, modified by any rend that I have, and then the damage will be applied. Now, some weapons do have special abilities, just like the guns. Some guns had shoot in combat. Some weapons will have crit something. Crit means you rolled a 6. Crit mortal means instead of doing the saves, mortal damage just goes through. It's damage that hits regardless of a save. A ward will still work, but you don't get to save. Crit 2 hits means every 6 is like you got 2 hits. So you're gonna roll a wound for each of those hits, the 6 and the bonus hit. You're gonna see stuff that says anti-infantry. That means if they're fighting infantry, they get the bonus. It'll be anti-infantry plus 1 rand. Or anti-cavalry, some game. It's plus 1 damage, right? So if you're fighting the right thing, those bonuses are going to apply. But then once the damage is done, the defending player takes his models off, allocates any damage to the unit, and now it's his turn. And that player will pick a unit. Doesn't have to pick the same one. In fact, it's probably better to pick a different one, because if I pick here and I kill a bunch of your guys, if you attack back, these guys aren't going to do any more damage, right? They've already attacked for this phase. You want to attack over here, because over here, maybe you kill a couple guys, and now, hey, I had 5 guys. That was going to be 10 attacks on you. You killed one. I only have 4 guys, 2 attacks each. So only 8 attacks are coming back on you. I'm less likely to kill your guys. So you go back and forth like that until eventually you'll make it back around and you'll attack here. But until everything has fought. And everything that can fight must fight. If you're within 3 inches, you have to fight. All right, commands in this phase. There's only 2, and they're the same ones that we saw earlier in the shooting phase, and that's all out attack. You say, all right, I'm going to give all my guys +1 on this, and all out defense. Hey, I'm going to give all my guys +1 save on this in defense. You can only do, each unit can only get 1 of them, and you can only do 1, during the phase, you can only do each one once. So if I all out attack this unit, that means I can't all out attack anything else, and it means I can't all out defense this particular unit because it's already all attack. Then I can all out defense over here later. But that's the idea. Everybody takes their damage, you get all your stuff. All right, that's it, combat's done. Once all that has been gone through, we've alternated, all the strike lasts are done. Now we have end of turn. So end of turn, there's not really a lot to do often, but sometimes units will have an ability that happens at end of turn. For example, the Skaven Clan Rats, at end of turn, they get D3 rats back. So now is when you would do that. You would roll the dice, get that many rats. And so any end of turn abilities happen. That is how you play. Now, once your turn is over, or let's say I've been playing, I'm the active player, it's my turn. Now it's your turn. And then you would go through all the same steps. You would do hero phase, movement, shooting, charging, combat, end. And then I would be the off-turn player doing those counter charges or those, shooting off turn and those things. Then, once you and I have both gone, that is the complete, you've scored your points. That's the complete battle round. Done, 1 battle round. So, the interesting thing about Age of Sigmar is it doesn't just become my turn again. Each battle round, it can be different. So what'll happen is at the start of the second battle round, we will roll off. And whoever wins gets to choose who takes the next round. Now, if we tie, whoever went first chose. So let's say I went first. Then if we tie, I would get to choose. But otherwise, if you roll higher, you get to choose, which means you could choose to go first in the second battle round, which means I went, then you went, next battle round, you will, then I go. So you would effectively get 2 turns in a row. Now, sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. It's not always right to take that double turn, but it is very, very powerful. And it means that when you can take it, it can be very good. And it means also when I play, I need to play my game knowing that you could take 2 in a row. So I don't want to overextend myself. I don't want to get into a combat that I feel like it's going to be bad for me. I don't want to put myself in range of your best shooter, so you're going to shoot me 2 turns in a row, right? There's different things that I can do to mitigate that, but it's something that you need to be aware of. Then once that is determined, you play the second battle round. And most games typically go 5 battle rounds, and then at the end, whoever has the most points wins. Battle plans. Okay, so now that we've talked about what you do on every game, how all the things move, how all the things shoot and attack and all that, then what you're going to do is you're going to look at battle plans. Now, this really changes up the game. In one battle plan, there might be, 4 objectives on the board, and whoever is controlling those objectives gets points, and then you get, most points at the end wins. Sometimes there's objectives that move, or objectives that show up later in the game, or different things. So every battle plan has its own differences, its unique differences, and that'll change from game to game and keep the game interesting and fresh. Now, the way that you get points, typically, the battle plans will say, but typically you get 2 points if you control an objective, you get 2 more points if you control a second objective, and you get 2 more points if you control more than your opponent. So that's up to 6 points, because maybe there's 4 objectives and I control them all. That means I've got 1, I've got 2, and and I've got more than you, but I don't get any extra points for having 3. In fact, if I had 4 points for all 4 objectives, I'd get 6 points. And if I had 3 objectives, I'd get 6 points, because I would still have 1, 2, and more than you. And so that's important to remember, because is it worth it to extend my army to take that 4th objective? Or, because it's the same amount of points to me, but maybe I am denying you points, maybe that's worth it. Or do I just focus on the 3, get the max points, and yeah, you're gonna get some too, but if I have more than you, that's all that matters, right? So I don't mind if you get 2 points, as long as I get 6. Now, the other thing that's gonna happen is battle tactics. If you're playing matched play, so this doesn't apply to Spearhead or narrative games really, but in matched play, which is sort of the more common one, it's the one that's the most balanced. Not the balance is perfect, but the most balanced. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna pick a battle tactic. And it's gonna be, you've got a list of 8, and then each Grand Alliance has 2 more they can pick from. And so you have a list of 10 that says, do this thing in this battle round. One might be, take the center, so you've got 2 units in the center. Take the flanks, so you're out on the flanks. Take an objective you didn't have this turn, whatever it is. You pick that at the very beginning, before your hero phase of the battle round. And then if you accomplish it during the game, during your turn, at the end of the turn, you'll get 4 points for that. Which means if you have 6 points from objective and 4 points from that, you can get 10 points on a turn, basically. Over 5 rounds, 50 points. So the other player, obviously, once they know, because you have to announce it at the beginning of your turn, once they know what you want to do, they're going to try to do things to mess you up. Now, they can't move or shoot or whatever, but they can spend the command points. So they could command point to redeploy, and now suddenly they're contesting an objective that you thought you had in the back. Or they can countercharge, and you were going to seize the center, and now boom, you're in combat. And even if they don't kill you, you're in combat. You can't, the objective requires you to be out of combat. You lose the objective. So when you choose that objective, you have to be aware, what can they do to mess you up? And when your opponent picks an objective, you have to think, okay, what can I do to mess that up? So I can take those 4 points away, that's good. 4 less points for you is good for me, because that allows me to catch up. Final notes. All right, couple of final notes to be aware of. First, underdog. So especially if this is your first game, this is something that you might be very aware of, but underdog is at the start of the battle round. The battle round 1, there's no underdog, everybody's the same, it's all equal. Battle round 2 forward, you look and see who has less points, fewer points. The player that has fewer points is the underdog, and that gives them 2 bonuses. 1, they get an extra command point. So instead of 4, they'll have 5. That can be very impactful. And 2, the battle plan itself will give the underdog some power. It's more or less powerful in some battle plans. Some battle plans it's very powerful and you almost want to be the underdog. Some battle plans it's a nice bonus. It's fine. It's probably good to help people catch up. That's the idea, is that if you're a little bit behind, it's going to give you a little boost to bring you back in line and hopefully have a closer game. Double turn penalty. All right, we talked before about the double turn. You might go second in one battle round, win the roll off, go first in the next battle round. You got 2 turns in a row. If that happens, if it was your choice to do that, if your opponent makes you do it, this doesn't happen. But if it was your choice to do that, there is a penalty. And the penalty is, because it's very powerful, but the penalty is you do not get to select a battle tactic, which means there is no way for you to get 4 points that round. You can get 6 from the objectives, but 6 is going to be your max. It is a 4-point penalty, which is significant. Now, maybe it's worth it. Maybe you can cripple your opponent. Maybe crippling your opponent plus being the underdog to help you catch back up. There's definitely reasons to take it. But when you take it, you will have that penalty. Command models. All right. So many units just are a bunch of guys running around doing stuff. But many have command models, and there's 3. Lots and lots of units have a champion, meaning the leader of the unit, the sergeant, the lieutenant, whatever it is. That guy has a bonus, and the bonus is he always gets 1 extra attack. If the attack says 2, all the other models get 2 attacks, but he gets 3, right? 1 extra. So as long as you have a champion, you'll always be rolling 1 more attack. And that applies to both his shooting and his melee weapons. The second kind is the standard bearer. The standard bearer usually has some flag or an icon or something like that. And if you have a standard bearer, 1 or more, then when you're on an objective, you count for being on, you count for having more models. So normally the way that you do it is I have 5 models on an objective, you have 3 models on an objective, I win. I win, I'm controlling the objective. Sometimes stuff is so big monsters or whatever, they'll be worth more. They'll be worth 2 each, or 3 each, or 5. It's a big monster. And so suddenly you're bigger than me because you're just taking up more space and killing my guys. But if I have a flag, I count as 1 more. So let's say I have 5 guys and you have 5 guys, but I have a flag. That means I have 6 guys on the objective. The objective counts for mine, I'm gonna get the points for it, or stop you from getting the points for it. And the third one is the musician. Lots of units have a musician. It's a bell ringer, or a fife player, or a drummer. If you have a musician, then when you rally that unit, you can roll an extra die. So instead of the 6, you get 7. So maybe you get an extra rally point, you can heal a guy back up. Okay, so with that all done, that is the game. You should now know basically how to play Age of Sigmar. Are there corner cases? Yes. Are there weird abilities? Yes, especially if you have a big model, some centerpiece model. A lot of times they have weird abilities that sort of ride the line in between these basics. Endless spells. So endless spells are a special case of spell. You pick a manifestation lore that gives you typically 3, sometimes 4 endless spells that you can cast, and all your wizards can do it. They can all cast it. Once you cast this, if you cast the spell and it's not unbound, not only does an effect happen, but it brings an actual model onto the battlefield. Right? There's a bunch of them. They're all out there. Brings a model onto the battlefield, and then that model has certain powers and certain abilities. And it is in many ways counted like a unit. That means it can move, it can charge, it can fight, it can be charged. To get rid of them, enemy wizards can banish them. They'll have a banishment value. So say a 6, that means an enemy wizard can, instead of casting, say, all right, I'm gonna give up one of my casts to banish that. If they roll a 6 or higher, it's gone. There's no unbinding a banish, it's just gone. Priests can also banish. So both wizards and priests can banish. And if you don't have any wizards or priests in your list, you can just punch it to death. They all have health and a save. And so you can attack it until it's gone. Now, it's good that ability is there because we didn't used to have that ability. But it's not really what you want your units to be doing, because you're gonna waste that whole attack. I shouldn't say waste, but you're gonna use up that whole attack on that endless spell, getting rid of it. Your opponent can just cast that endless spell again next turn, right? And all of that attack, all of that effort that you put into killing that thing could have been put in a different unit, taking over an objective. Strategy. So I'm not gonna get deep into strategy, that's not important, but there are a couple of things that I think that for your first game, you should be aware of. One, be aware of what's coming into you. If something is really good on the charge, let's say Gorgruntas, they get plus damage on the charge. On the charge, they'll do mortal damage to you from just coming into you, what is sometimes called an impact hit, just charging you, they'll do damage to you. So sometimes you see those guys coming and you think, all right, even though I don't necessarily want to attack them, it's better for me to charge them and get into combat than for them to charge me, because their damage will be less, they won't be getting the charge bonus, they won't be doing damage to me coming into me because I'm coming into them. So you need to look at that. Second, a lot of weapons have anti-something, anti-infantry, anti-cavalry, anti-monster, anti-charge, whatever it is. You want to make sure that you're lining up your guys to most effectively kill their guys, and you're trying to hide your guys from their effective kill. A lot of cavalry is anti-infantry. So you don't want your infantry hanging out where their cavalry is going to come and charge you next time, because their cavalry is going to do a lot of damage to you, kill a bunch of your guys. You want to take your monster into their cavalry, or you want to take your cavalry to screen off. So you want to make sure that you are looking at those things so that your units are going to be as effective as possible against their units. Finally, protection. Especially if you have little heroes, you want to make sure those little heroes can't easily be attacked. So you don't want to, even though it's sort of cool for them to be in front, for the lines of warriors to be behind them because they're leading the fray, they're going to get killed. It's a lot better to put them in a sort of command major role, right? Put them behind the line so they can see what's going on. And that way, if something comes to attack them, they have to fight through the unit first before they get to your guy. I hope this has been helpful in learning how to play Age of Sigmar. Like I said, if you want to show this to a friend before your first game so they can get it, great. If you just wanted to know more about it, fine. As you play the game, there will be abilities and corner cases and things that maybe you can read the core rules for. And the core rules are downloadable for free online. You can get the rules for free. But from there on out, all you need to worry about is your war scrolls. What are your stats? What special abilities does this unit have? And also each army has special abilities. When you build your list, oftentimes you're allowed to take at least one of your heroes can get a trait to give them some special power, and one of your heroes can take an artifact to give them some special power, and one hero can do both. Those are all there. So you need to make sure you remember all your special abilities. You'll forget a lot of them. It's fine. The most important thing is have fun. Go kill their models. Your toys are going to get killed too. Warhammer's a pretty deadly game. And have a blast saving the mortal realms or corrupting them. This has been another episode of Battle Ready. Thanks so much for watching.